Now, President Donald Trump has voiced confidence that the United States may soon finalize an agreement with Iran aimed at preventing Tehran from developing a nuclear weapon. And this comes hours after saying he had postponed a planned military attack to allow negotiations to continue. Hear this out.
I put it off for a little while, hopefully maybe forever, but possibly for a little while, because we've had very big discussions with Iran, and we'll see what they amount to. I was asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and some others if we could put it off for 2 or 3 days, a short period of time, because they think that they are getting very close to making a deal.
But Trump has said he has instructed the U.S. military to be prepared to go forward with a full large-scale assault of Iran on a moment's notice in the event that an acceptable deal is not reached.
Periods of time where we thought pretty much getting close to making a deal, and didn't work out, but this is a little bit different. Now, we're ready going tomorrow, very big, and not something I wanted to do, but we have no choice because we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Yeah.
While Iranian Foreign Ministry confirmed talks with U.S. through mediator Pakistan, President Masoud Pezeshkian said that dialogue does not mean surrender and that Tehran would defend its dignity and rights. And according to Iran's Tasnim news agency, Tehran's demands include an immediate end to the war on all fronts. And that's a reference to the continued Israeli attacks against Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. It also includes guarantees of no further attacks on Iran, a demand for compensation for war damage, and they also reportedly include a halt to the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports and an emphasis on Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Now, according to Iran's Fars news agency, Washington presented 5 conditions in response to Tehran's proposal on Sunday, and the reported demands included limiting Iran to a single operational nuclear facility and transferring its stockpile of highly enriched uranium to the U.S. Now, the report also claimed that U.S. officials refused to release even 25% of Iran's frozen assets or provide any reparations, but agreed to ease oil sanctions while negotiations are underway. Well, for more on this, we are now being joined by Mohammed Najib, who is a war correspondent and security analyst. And we also have with us Dr. Mir Javed Anfer, lecturer of Iranian politics at Reichman University in Israel and co-author of The Nuclear Sphinx of Tehran. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you.
I'll start with Dr. Anfer here. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has often referred to Iran's nuclear material as nuclear dust, and that's in reference to the June 2025 bombing, which he claims obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Now, Trump has repeatedly said that U.S. will take possession of it, but also provided contradictory statements on how this will be done. So when he says, and I'm just quoting here what he said in the post, no nuclear weapons for Iran, is it talking about a possible deal where the nuclear dust will still exist?
Well, just now, it's difficult to really pin down what President Trump says. One day he says one thing, the next he contradicts himself. Until now, he has been stating clearly that the United States wants the removal of the enriched uranium. I don't know, nuclear dust is not the right expression to describe it. It's really enriched uranium. It's in a gases. It's in a gas form, and he has been saying that it must be transferred out of Iran. Now he makes another statement saying, well, this would perhaps be overlooked, and the United States may change its demand regarding that. Difficult to know just now. It's very difficult to predict what President Trump does. Since this war started, he has been making contradictory statements, and this is something that is actually confusing the Iranians. They actually they find it difficult to pin down exactly what is it that he wants. Some people believe that this is a negotiation strategy to keep the other side off balance. It could mean that he's changing his position. It could be either of those. It's very difficult to know, but negotiations are always about give and take. So if we are going to have an agreement by the end of this war, both sides are going to have to give something to get something. And what happens to the 60%, and which uranium may be one of them, but it's too early to say. And I advise your viewers not to jump into conclusions at the moment based on statements made by President Trump.
That's very interesting. I'll call back on the statement. You talked about, of course, give something. I'd like to go to Mr. Najib now. So when you talk about concessions, U.S. has time again said that, Iran has fallen short of any kind of concessions for U.S. to even consider. Do you see an off-ramp in the statement from Trump?
First of all, the Arab countries, the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Qatar urged Trump, as well as the mediators, not to resume the strikes against Iran. And they offered to mediate and to find a solution for that. Actually, in this, Trump is offering Iran a diplomatic exit, but with a gun on the table. And he's moving from a total military pressure to deal first and details later. But I think this is not acceptable by Israel that want to dismantle the Iranian nuclear program, not to pose that, because Iran will be capable to resume the uranium enrichment, and to continue its threat for the regional countries as well as to Israel for its ballistic missiles, as well as with the nuclear bomb. So Trump is trying to reopen the Hormuz and to deal with the sanctions and trying to find an exit for Iran. But the Iranians don't take that much serious, so they think that this is like de-escalation, not surrender to the American pressure. And the Americans trying to overcome the problem in this way, but this is not satisfying Israel. And the Gulf countries who were targeted by Iranian attacks are concerned from the resumption of the war. So they were urging Trump not to do that and to give diplomacy an opportunity to convince Iran to find a peace deal with them.
And talking of deal, Dr. Anfer, I'll come to you. We talked about the concessions and something has to be given. And now, of course, what we know right now is that when in the statement, the Gulf nations were mentioned, but Israel has not been. And for now, at least, we have not heard of any phone call between the two leaders, Netanyahu and Trump. How is Israel looking at this development of Trump announcing that we are halting the attacks because we are in talks with Iran?
Well, to be honest with you, there's not that much that Israel can do about it. I think what the Israeli preference is to carry out further military attacks to weaken Iran's, especially missile industry. You see, there's a very big difference here between Israel and the United States, in that the United States can reach a deal with Iran because Iran is willing to sit down and talk to the United States. But the Islamic Republic of Iran has never been willing to sit down, and is unlikely to be willing in the future to sit down and talk to Israel regarding a possible agreement to stop this ongoing war, which has been going on since 1991, because the Islamic Republic of Iran does not believe that Israel should exist. And therefore, for Israel, there is no other option other than the military option. But at the same time, we have to realize that there's a hierarchy here. It's the United States first. It's the United States who is leading. Israel is following. Prime Minister Netanyahu is following what President Trump does. So in this case, President Trump wants to give talks a chance. Prime Minister Netanyahu does not have any other option other than to obey. He would like things to be different. He would like to launch attacks against Iran. But in this case, there is a commander in this war, and that commander is President Trump, and he's the one who's setting the agenda in terms of what will happen in terms of the war, and Israel has to follow. Let's wait and see what happens in the next 3 or 4 days to see if there's going to be an agreement. If there is, then we can talk about its implications for Israel.
Dr. Mara, I'd like to take a follow-up question on that. You mentioned that Israel has nothing to do, but when Tehran has demanded, for example, one of the terms is an immediate end to the war on all fronts, and that is, of course, a reference to the continued Israeli attacks against Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. Will Israel agree to that?
No. Israel cannot agree to that as long as Iran is supplying weapons to Hezbollah, which launched this war against Israel. I would like to remind your viewers that it was Hezbollah who 2 days after the 7th of October massacre launched a war against the state of Israel, and the state of Israel, until Hezbollah has forces in southern Lebanon that threaten its citizens, will not accept the end to war. No Israeli government will. Hopefully, if Prime Minister Netanyahu is voted out of office and there's a new government, they will not agree to it. We need this threat by Hezbollah to stop. It's very important to note that the idea of land for peace, where Israel basically evacuates occupied territory in return for peace, was tested in 2000, May 2000. Israel withdrew from every inch of Lebanese territory, and in accordance to UN Resolution 425, and confirmed by Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the UN. Since then, Hezbollah, instead of rebuilding Lebanon, has been attacking Israel and basically holding Lebanon back. So this is not something that Israel can live with.
All right, I'll come to Dr. Mai, I'll come back to you. Of course, I'll go to our other guest, Mr. Najib now. So you talked about the Gulf nations and their role. So we know that Trump has said that the Gulf nations were the ones who convinced Trump to hold the attacks. At the same time, of course, there's also Saudi Arabia, who has now Pakistan, one of the mediator, they're going to be, of course, sending and deploying 8,000 troops, fighter jets, and advanced air defense systems to Saudi Arabia. How do you assess the role of GCC countries at a point where they're, of course, telling President Trump to hold on the attacks, but of course there's also aligning with Pakistan, one of the mediators, to get these defenses from them?
Actually, the Gulf states want the war to be called down, as they have suffered a lot. The United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, because of the Iranian targeting of them, and they lose a lot of that. They didn't expect that to be happened, and the American military bases there didn't protect them. They try to protect Israel, so they are upset and lost a lot of that, and they try to find the solution. They don't want to resume the war. So, and the point where the guest says is, actually, I know that the Israeli red line is wider than the American red line here. And as he says that Netanyahu is following Trump, but at the beginning, Trump agreed to join this war because, based on Netanyahu information, that it will be within a few days, they will dismantle the Iranian regime, and that didn't happen. So Trump realized that the promises or the expectation that the Iranian regime will be toppled down within a few days if they targeted their 40 top leaders didn't happen, and now the closure of Strait of Hormuz make a problem for the energy, international energy, and for the Gulf countries who are close allied to the United States. So that's become a problem for Trump in the region, and he trying to solve the problem in every possible way. And he didn't abandon the Iranian nuclear program, but he trying to shift the issues how to deal with that. First, he want to have, he think that through a peace deal he can reach that. But I don't think the Iranian will, they are maneuvering and they are playing with the time, and they understand the weak point of the Americans there. So they will keep maneuvering, and at the end they will not abandon the nuclear program as the Americans want. But for Israel, it's a real problem. They didn't accomplish their job. And for the Americans, they're trying to use different ways. And we are watching, and the whole region is watching cautiously what's going to happen.
Israel not completed the job. I'll take your point there. Dr. Meyer, now, of course, for Trump, do you think that he's going to be falling short of asking Israel, as you said, that Israel does not know what to do right now? Because, of course, for Trump at this point of time, it's also the midterm elections he's looking at, especially considering the fact that there's also the Tuesday primary taking place, which also has one of these swing states, there's a major election before the midterm happens. Do you think that at this point of time, Trump would be looking at a solution rather than also talking with Israel on this, or would he be, talking with Israel before he goes for any other deal with Iran?
I think he will talk to Israel, but he will follow his own interests first. And in Israel, we are very worried that there could be a deal that does not meet our security interests. Because at the end of the day, despite being great friends and great allies, the United States has its own interests, and they do not always overlap with those of Israel. So we are concerned about what's going to happen. We are concerned about if there's a deal that basically ties Israel's hands from attacking Iran in the future, if the Iranian regime threatens our security, be it through proxies or be it directly. Israel wants to have the right to attack Iranian targets if the Iranians threaten its interests. But so we have to wait and see what kind of a deal there is going to be. But Israel will have to basically accept what President Trump agrees with the Iranians. The government will try to tell its position to the President Trump. President Trump will take Israeli concerns into consideration without a shadow of a doubt, but not as long as they clash with the interest of his own government. And here Israel has to obey what America decides in the future. And this is, of course, something that could be in our interest or it could be against our interests. But there's one area which I think many of us in Israel would like to see US pressure on the current Israeli government, are the violent attacks against innocent Palestinians in the West Bank, torching of cars, attacking mosques, attacking innocent people that have been happening time and again in the West Bank, and there is no solution to it. And this is against our values as Jews, this is against our values as Israelis and Zionists, but we don't see any pressure by President Trump against Prime Minister Netanyahu on this. And as long as there's no pressure, these vile attacks against innocent Palestinians who have nothing to do with Hamas will continue.
Right.
And this is something that is very likely to damage our security interests.
All right. I'll take your point there, Dr. Maher, and thank you so much to you, Dr. Maher, and Mohammed Najib for joining us on the broadcast and giving your opinions. Appreciate it.
Thank you.